now have our general counsel read us out of closed session.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. There were 4 items considered in closed session at the regular meeting this evening. The first was a hearing under Health and Safety Code 32155. There was no reportable action. The second was approval of closed session minutes from the regular meeting in February and the special meeting on March 2nd. Those minutes were approved on a 5-0 vote. There's no reportable action on the third item, a hearing under Health and Safety Code 32155. And on the fourth item, medical staff credentialing, the credentialing recommendations were approved on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you so much. Do I have any input from our audience on any item not on the agenda? If you have any comments, we're going to ask you to limit it to 3 minutes. And if you'll start by saying your name. While I'm waiting for someone to say their name, I'll ask our clerk if anybody's written any questions or concerns or comments.
I have not received any written public comment.
Thank you.
And it may be worth, Madam Chair, mentioning that for the public that does wish to speak, they can use the raise your hand function under the reactions button on the Zoom portal.
So did our audience hear our legal counsel indicate that you can raise your hand on the screen for the Zoom? I got a thumbs up. Somebody knows about it. 2 thumbs up.
I didn't even know that was there.
So,
see it.
It's down at the bottom.
Yeah, reactions.
It's
Yeah.
limited.
It's not on mine.
on reaction at the bottom,
I don't
So
have
we're-
react.
Far right.
where the
Uh-huh.
chat and the share screen is, it's in that line. Okay, now that we know how to raise our hands, I'll ask if there's any input from our Employees Association. Any written report coming from or audience input from the Employees Association, Martina?
Performance with Kelly Clarkson. It's a nice.
No. Kelly Clarkson isn't part. All right, then safety first. Who's our safety?
Yep,
That
that'll
would be
be
Matt Mache.
Okay, take it away, Matt.
All right. So tonight's safety first, and you can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I hate saying that. I'm sorry. Tonight's safety first is on elder abuse because that's what I chose 5 seconds ago. And I'll read you the Department of Justice definition of elder abuse. It's a person that commits financial exploitation of an elderly person or a person with a disability when standing in the position of trust or confidence with that elderly person and knowingly or by deception obtains control over the property of that elderly person. I know, Chair Wong, you just showed your card a second ago, but I don't know if you qualify. They list 6 types of elder abuse, and those are physical, emotional, sexual, negligent, financial, and fraudulent. Just my screen went off. Negligent is usually the most common type of elder abuse happening in nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities. However, the one that's on the rise and expanding the most is the financial and the fraudulent abuse. Causes for this are what we're going through now with COVID, where people are socially isolated. There's no one really checking to make sure that elderly people are okay. And also diminished capacity with people that are just not fully aware of their finances and what's going on. A common thing you'll see in these cases is suddenly they have a new best friend who's following them around. I'm sure a lot of people have seen a movie that's out recently called I Care a Lot. It's a guardian that has a deal with a doctor where they say this person no longer has capacity. They take it to court. She becomes the guardian and then has control over this person's life and goes on to auction off their house and various belongings. Obviously, probably a felony form of elder abuse. Let me read you. The law on this is the Older Americans Act of 2006. And it defines it legally as financial exploitation as the fraudulent or otherwise illegal, unauthorized, improper act, including a caregiver or a fiduciary that uses the resources of an older individual for monetary or personal benefit. As you can guess, this goes with consequences. There's two flavors of penalties. There's the misdemeanor flavor, which is fines, usually around $6,000. However, the felony flavor of it can go up to 4 years in jail. So definitely a criminal act. On the other side of the abuse issue, I found it interesting that if you Google this, it will give you 6 steps to avoid not paying your nursing home. I think these are mainly trying to not make your payments or not have your assets taken away or your money taken away in order to use Medicaid. So let me see here. Somewhere I have a list. 6 steps to protect your assets from nursing home care. Give money or gift to your loved ones. Hire an attorney to draft a life estate. Place liquid assets in an annuity. Transfer a portion of your monthly income to your spouse, or shelter the money through an irrevocable trust. I think there are people out there that may screw up this last step thinking they can place it in a living trust or a revocable trust. That does not separate your money. And lastly, I will say, what should you do about this? If you see anyone that might be in need of help, you should report it to APS, Adult Protective Services, law enforcement, or you could also report it to Department of Justice. And that's the safety first for tonight.
Matt, a group of hospitals that I was affiliated with at one point in time had a rash of elder abuse claims through their skilled nursing facilities and extended care facility and the like. And the claims of elder abuse had to do with pressure ulcers. And because they were felony claims, the physician malpractice insurance was voided. And so we had a hard time getting physicians to go into the nursing facilities for a period of time because they felt that their exposure was too great. I don't know if that's still a trend that you see out there, but for a while there, it was really a mess.
So that could fall under either the physical abuse or the neglect.
Right.
We do have medical malpractice insurance that covers neglect or any accidents, as long as they weren't intentionally doing this.
But the charge of elder abuse was unique.
Right. Being criminal in nature.
Because it was criminal, right?
Yeah. And I'd like to say elder abuse is not what I did to my parents when I was younger. That is not one of those.
Okay, certainly a topic that we're hearing more and more about as we have more and more seniors and finances and all the other things in our society that are going on that may contribute to it. So thank you for bringing that to our forefront, Matt. And then we're going to move on to item 13, acknowledgements. We've got our Chief HR Officer, Alex McClellan, who's going to talk about our March 2021 Employee of the Month.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very honored this month to announce Gwen Van Netta as our March Employee of the Month. Here's some of the things that her colleagues say about her. Gwen has been absolutely integral part of the efforts to vaccinate our employees and community healthcare workers against COVID-19. Her organization skills and persistence made an extremely complicated process look effortless. She directly coordinated and scheduled nearly 2,100 appointments, working with both directors and schools to fit people in. To say she answered or responded to 3,000 phone calls would be a conservative estimate. And she did all with empathy and superb customer service. No matter how busy she was also going to jump in and help her with any issues that popped up. It's not an exaggeration to say we could not have done it without her. And I've worked with Gwen, and I just have to say she is an amazing person. She really does put her all into Tahoe Forest, and for that we are forever grateful. So thank you, Gwen, very much for everything you do.
Thank you, everyone. If you could see me, my face would be bright red and 50 million shades of red, but thank you.
I'm so glad you're on, Gwen. It really, we were talking earlier about you, and you make your work look easy, but you also make so many people happy. And you do so by taking on everything and just saying, yes, I can. If somebody needs help, you just say yes, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, congratulations again, Gwen. And congratulations to all of our nominees for Employee of the Month. And 13.2 is Doctor's Day, and Mary Brown, who has physicians in her family, is going to do us this acknowledgement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alice. Yes, in memory of my grandfather and my uncles, and especially my father, who would be 99 today. I appreciate the fortune to acknowledge that March 30th is National Doctors Day. So on this day, we recognize the diverse and valuable work that doctors perform. And it's also an opportunity to thank the women and men who keep our community healthy and save lives. So if you would like to honor your physicians, please consider having a personalized handwritten message delivered by the Tahoe Forest or Incline Village Foundations. These gratitude grams can be found on the TahoeForestHospital.com website. And we encourage people to do that because, after all, we cannot thank physicians enough for all that they do. And I appreciate the opportunity to make those remarks.
Thank you so much, Mary. And we look forward to celebrating Doctor's Day with all of our providers. So thank you again. And 13.3, this is an award that was received by our Women's and Family Center. It's from the California Maternal Quality Care Collaborative. And it's a maternal data collection center. And I just want to let you know, our OB department is so far ahead of the curve. I can't even tell you. We were the first in the area for baby friendly. We submit our data to all of the quality organizations that want maternal and child data. And this particular award is because we're early implementers. In 2022, there are some metrics that the state of California is going to require all providers or maternal child providers to submit. And so we had the information, so we went ahead and submitted it and have been submitting it. And so as a result of that, we got an early implementers award. So congratulations to our OB department who always keeps ahead. And I wondered if Dr. Cole might want to say anything.
Yeah, specifically with breastfeeding, I believe we are typically the top county in all of California with breastfeeding rates. We have an extensive team that helps us, and the Women and Family Department is just truly amazing and such a great team effort. So big kudos to the team. And interesting that we had no idea we were even eligible for this award. It came by surprise. We were just doing something that we thought was good to do, and we've been doing it for years, and they're just recognizing it now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And please send our regards to the Women and Family Center for the award. And then moving on to 14, our Medical Staff Executive Committee. And we have Dr. Joanna Koch with us in open session. She's our Vice Medical Staff. She's our Vice Chief of Staff. So Dr. Koch, if you want to present the MEC meeting consent agenda, please take over.
All right, and Dorothy's going to share screen for that, I believe.
Martina, am I able to share? Sorry. There we go. So this was the first item on the agenda, was changes to the internal medicine privilege form. And
so these changes are in order to reflect the need for telemedicine providers, as we requested privileges earlier, for the telemedicine program for Incline Village. There are no other changes on this form.
the second item was family medicine privilege form, also the same changes.
Right. Again, both family and internal medicine need to be able to do telehealth to facilitate the transition to the new format for the emergency room call coverage for Incline to Vituity. So again, no other changes there. And this is the consent agenda, and there were no changes. These are all just updated renewals of policies and procedures. There were no significant changes on any of them.
And again, that's the annual
correct
annual nursing policies and procedures that we're reviewing.
That's correct. The annual nursing policies and procedures. These are all just renewals.
Yeah. Okay. So are there any questions for Dr. Koch regarding either the privilege forms or the nursing policy and procedures?
Yeah, this is Art. I have a question on this last form. It says the next approval date, there's a various dates. So is this just done once a year? Is that why we're doing it now? Because it has like January and July and October.
That's a great question. Shawnee, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, this is just our annual review of all of these policies done once a year, and we combine them all together.
Okay, thank you.
And I think also oftentimes what they'll do is they'll take sections of a policy and procedure manual and they'll review that section during a period of the year. So they're not looking at every single one of them once a year when they're doing the department's review. So when nursing looks at this.
That makes sense.
Okay. Any questions from our audience regarding this? Because you know where that little icon is to raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, I'd like a motion to approve the Medical Executive Committee meeting consent agenda that included privilege forms with changes for internal medicine and family medicine, as well as the annual policy approval for the nursing service policy and procedures.
I so move.
Okay. Could I have a second, please? Okay, so I have a motion by Director King, a second by Director Brown. And can I have a roll call vote?
Director McGarry?
Aye.
Director Shamblin?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Brown?
Aye.
Director Wong?
Aye. So the calendar is accepted as presented by Dr. Koch. Thank you so much again, Dr. Koch, for coming and giving us the information.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Item 15 on our agenda is the consent calendar. And usually these are reports or non-controversial information, but anybody from the board or our audience can pull an item if they so choose. And do I have anybody that wants to pull anything from our consent calendar? Anybody in our audience that wants to pull anything? Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved, Dale.
I'll second, Michael.
Okay, so it's been moved by Director Shamlin, seconded by Director McGarry, that we accept the consent calendar as presented. A roll call vote.
Director McGarry.
Aye.
Director Shamblin.
Aye.
Director King.
Aye.
Director Brown. I think you said yes.
No,
I can't hear you. Okay,
I
got
read her
it.
lips.
Director Long.
Aye.
And direct, okay.
Okay, and the consent calendar then is approved as presented. So we'll move on to item 16. I think it's twice a year. We get a report on the district's retirement plans. And tonight we have Brian Martinez from the MOTMO group to give us that report. So Brian, if you're there, I think I saw you.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me. I believe Martina is going to pull up the presentation for us in just a moment. Here we go. All right. So correct, Ms. Wong, twice a year, I'll present a report on the activities that the Retirement Plan Committee undertook to help you exercise your oversight of the delegation that you gave to the committee. So here we have the Q3 2020 committee meeting where we reviewed the investments and we had no removal or watch list. Everything was in good shape. And the committee reviewed the plan assets to ensure accuracy reporting, and no issues were found. So that's good. The committee received Multnomah Group's Multnomah Group's review of Fidelity's participant services, including the education and advisory services provided by Fidelity. Again, that is our joint responsibility to provide oversight to that. We feel that the Fidelity service model is a prudent one for our participants. The committee conducted an annual review of the fiduciary insurance, confirming that the fiduciaries, including board members, have adequate fiduciary insurance for these retirement plans. And the committee received the Fidelity mid-year plan review, reviewing plan participation, asset allocation, deferral rates, beneficiary designations, and the update to the CARES Act. Through December 31, there were 30 participants, or only 2.6% of the population took a COVID-related distribution. That is an excellent number. Only 6 loans and only 2 people chose to defer loans because of COVID. Could have been them, could have been their family member, could have been their spouse, we don't know. But these are very low numbers relative to the rest of the country. And 44% of active participants have beneficiaries on file, which is not acceptable to the committee. We've done some outreach in the past, and we will continue with the outreach during the benefits fair to encourage that participants designate a beneficiary. It's a very important thing that unfortunately most people don't attend to. And about a year ago, I did a study on my clients, and what we found was only about half, 50% of participants, and I cover 34 different clients. So you guys are right in there with the averages, but we do need to bring those up. And unfortunately,
I have a quick question. What is a COVID-related distribution?
Yeah, so the CARES Act gave a few distribution and loan options to participants. A COVID-related distribution is similar to a hardship distribution where I have a need that is a result of COVID. Either I have COVID, my spouse has COVID, my child has COVID, and I need to take a distribution from my retirement plan to meet our financial needs for whatever reason. The participant gets to self-certify that. That was written into the law by Congress, so we don't need to know why they took it. We don't have to challenge it. But if a participant said, hey, I have a COVID-related issue and I need to take a distribution from my retirement plan, they can. The beauty of it is there's no penalty on it as there are with early retirement distributions. And the taxes can be paid over a period of 3 years. And if a participant wanted to, and had the ability to, they could put the money back into the plan, unlike any other type of distribution.
Nice.
Similarly, CARES loans, they doubled the amount that participants could take for loans. And the loan deferral is a reference to the fact that participants could defer payments on a loan, an existing loan for 2020 for a full year. And then they pick it up and they re-amortize the loan. So no penalties.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions on Q3? All right, let's look at Q4.
Beyond,
Yeah,
just a quick question on your statement about needing to get that number up. Beneficiaries above 44% was pretty strong. Beyond outreach at with open enrollment, are there any other activities planned to drive that number?
We did an effort last year. We directed Fidelity to conduct an outreach campaign, and that moved the numbers a little bit. So this will be our second effort, and it's going to take a third and a fourth. So I foresee this being an ongoing endeavor, because if we still have 56% of the people, it's an uphill climb.
And Brian, when an employee comes on and they enroll in the retirement plan, do they fill out forms, and isn't the beneficiary one of the blanks they have to write in?
They have the opportunity, but it's not a requirement.
Oh.
And that's the challenge.
Oh. And
especially with automatic enrollment, it's not necessarily a field that people are going to see because they're being automatically enrolled. But it's like I said, with the 34 clients that I handle, 50% was about the average. So it's not a Tahoe thing. It's an inertia thing for American investors. We'll get it up. We're going to keep working on it.
Okay.
In Q4, we reviewed the performance of the plan investments, no removal or watch list, and we looked at the assets. Everything looked good there as well. The committee confirmed that there were no formal claims, inquiries, or participant complaints. So no IRS, no DOL, no plaintiff's attorney. When I say participant complaints, I don't mean just somebody complaining to Alex about the stock market. It's a legal complaint, and there were none of those. The committee confirmed through legal counsel that there were no legally required plan amendments. There will be for 2021 because of the Bipartisan Budget Act and the Secure Act. And in 22, there will be for the CARES Act. Why are these delayed? When Congress or the IRS or the DOL come out with interim rules or amendments, they usually say something like, you may implement this today and you have until the year following the year of implementation to amend your plan document. So Bipartisan Budget Act, Secure Act, and CARES Act were all passed in the last 2 years, and those amendments are coming due in 21 and 22. The committee received Multnomah Group's 2020 regulatory update focusing on CARES Act, Secure Act, the DOL EBSA rule covering environmental, social, and governance investments, as well as current ERISA litigation. And the committee agreed that there were no immediate actions required for the plans. And we kind of settled back into our normal routine. So we did some fiduciary education, and I presented our module for fiduciary training, fiduciary governance, understanding the foundational documents. So a breakdown for the plan. And by the way, I've said it before, these are excellent numbers. So on the left-hand side, the 401A plan, the employer plan, assets increased from 46 million as of June of 20 to 55.8 as of December 31 of 20. And all investments scored satisfactory. Nothing was on watch list. Nothing was recommended for removal. The 457B also had a significant increase in the 6-month period from 58.9 to 69.4. And the investments are the same investments. And our participation rate did drop a little bit from 87.1 to 84. I do not have a good explanation as to why, except for the fact that there were some challenges happening there in the country. So I don't have specifics. I've talked to HR. They don't have specifics. Fidelity doesn't have specifics. The average deferral rate did increase from 8.4 to 9. And again, I'm going to contribute this to getting the zeros from automatic enrollment up to 6s. So getting those zeros out of the math and adding 6s really does help the participation rate. So 84% as of year end with a 9% saving rate. These are excellent numbers. Anything above 80 is industry leading, really. I mean, at 84 and 9%, that's an excellent, excellent number. And then the bottom here, total savings rate. So employee and employer increased from 13 to 15, which is that number that everybody needs, right? 15%. So between 10 and 15% is what financial planners suggest. Your average participant at Tahoe is deferring and receiving a total of 15%. So they're doing a very good job at getting ready for retirement. Any questions?
No.
So yeah, this is Art. So that deferral rate of 15%, that's the combination of the employee and the employer.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
And then that increased asset number at the top of that screen, how much of that is increased contributions versus just the market went up quite a bit?
It's the lion's share of the market. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
there might have been $1 million total between employer and employee that went in that 6 months period, but it really was the markets.
Yeah.
As you all probably have seen, markets have been going exceptionally well with that little blip in March and April.
Yeah.
Brian,
Okay.
Dale here. How has gain sharing affected contributions?
Gain sharing?
Our gain sharing plan that we have.
Brian may not know much about that.
Oh,
You know, I will say, this is Alex, Chief Human Resources Officer. I will say some employees choose prior to gain sharing distribution to increase their contributions, but a lot don't. And so we haven't seen a huge increase. There are a few people that do that, but not a ton.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for having me here today, and I look forward to seeing you in 6 months.
All right. Thank you very much,
you.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Our next item is telemedicine for our board education. And I think Scott Baker is here and he's going to do the presentation.
I am here. Good evening, everybody.
Hey there.
Thanks for some time. Sorry, my wife just handed me dinner, so I was a little bit off camera there. Martina, do you have our...
Must be nice.
She makes a mean potato soup if anybody's interested.
All right on.
Sounds good.
All right. So Martina, you can go to the first slide. So I was asked to present just a very high level, very brief. In fact, I think Chairman Wong is on pace to set the record for the shortest board meeting of all time. So I won't get in the way of that. But I was asked to present just very briefly on telemedicine, how we've been using it, how we used it during the pandemic, and how we intend to use it moving forward and what those restrictions are. So first and foremost, I think everybody agrees that telemedicine is a very important tool in our healthcare delivery system, but everybody plays under the different rules and regulations for telemedicine. And we, just given the nature of our regulatory environment, have some of the strongest regulations. And I've listed some of the regulation changes that happened during the pandemic that allowed us to really increase our access to telemedicine for our patients. And I've listed 5 of the biggest that made the biggest impact, but there were several more. So first and foremost, the state line moratorium, where states didn't recognize each other's state licensing processes, were relaxed during the pandemic to different degrees at different times. And so our classic example would be somebody sitting on the Truckee campus, medical provider could see a patient of theirs in the Verdi community, but prior to the pandemic and the relaxation of those regulatory controls, we just couldn't do that. You had to be licensed in both the state where you were sitting and charging the encounter, as also in the state where the patient was sitting. The second relaxation was what is known as the originating site, and that basically is where the patient is sitting. And in a typical environment outside the pandemic, most often the patient has to be sitting in a medical clinic in order to receive that medical care. And I want to state, you know, the probably pretty obvious question is, some of you have had some at-home encounters that you've paid $50, $100 to see a provider. We're talking about encounters that are chargeable under our payer contracts. And under a normal circumstance, the originating site has to be at a medical clinic. The third one is RHCs. Under normal regulatory controls, you just cannot do virtual encounters under an RHC. So for any encounter of any of our 3 working on 4 RHC designations, we just can't do virtual care out of an RHC. Commercial payers is another restriction. I would label that as a closed network that we're all becoming all too familiar with. Many commercial payers will have closed networks, which you can see a virtual physician, but it has to be one of the physicians on, say, Blue Cross's network, that you have to sign up, you have to see it, a physician or medical provider through their network. You can't see your own physician at Tahoe Forest, for example. And the last one was more of an IT aspect, that there were a lot of regulations governing the portal requirements and the restrictions there. And under the pandemic rules and the relaxations there, you could basically use an off-the-shelf purely virtual. So you didn't have to spend a lot of money building the backbone of a virtual environment in order to see those patients. So those are some of the rules and regulations that were relaxed during the pandemic that really allowed us to start using virtual medicine on a larger scale. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that we took full advantage of those relaxed regulations. The weekly encounters, you can see prior to the pandemic, really we were on a single digit into the teens on a weekly basis for virtual encounters. We were using them, for example, in our cancer program where the patient was down at Barton. And because of those regulations that I just mentioned, we could interact with the patient virtually down at the Barton facility. So starting in mid to late March, when the pandemic really started to hit hard and those regulations started to be relaxed, we had to start closing clinics and really restricting hard our patient access. And at that point, we took advantage of those relaxed regulations and really started to implement a virtual program. And I've got to give a lot of credit to the team, the clinic leadership, Jake's team, Crystal's team, our access center, all came together. And within 2 weeks, we had a virtual program built and starting to implement in the clinics. And that is absolutely unheard of. That was a monumental effort. And I've got to brag a little bit that they really took advantage of those relaxed regulations and kind of a proof of concept proved that virtual care was a very useful tool.
Well, I think it also showed that America is probably more ready for telemedicine than people think if they would just let us run, like take the reins off and keep these rules relaxed. I think that there'll be a lot more adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think if there is a silver lining in COVID, one of them would be that it really shined a spotlight on virtual medicine and showed that it is a very useful tool. Unfortunately, the regulations don't allow us to take advantage of it to the full potential. And so you can see there for about a month, we were seeing more people through the virtual portal than we were your traditional in-person encounters. And that's entirely because of the program that we put together pretty much on the fly and taking advantage of those relaxed regulations. And then about June 1st, we had to pull back and really start to restrict those again, because a lot of these relaxed regulations started to come up against deadlines of, okay, we're going to pull this regulation back. For example, the commercial payer said, we're no longer going to pay for your providers. We're only going to do our closed network again. So starting June 1st, we started to pull back because of those regulatory concerns, and we're still doing a pretty good percentage for our historical averages anyway. Something in the neighborhood of 5% encounters, and we're limiting that to patients at increased risk, patients with high risk, comorbidities, whatever, that we really feel that it's important to take advantage of those virtual medicine capabilities. And that's really only because if we were to continue to do this on a large scale with the regulations back to the pre-pandemic levels, it would basically be financial suicide. And if we go to the last slide here, there are some very useful opportunities for us to use this, and we will continue to do that. So for example, we just signed an agreement with Renown to do inpatient stroke care through their neuro network of neurology providers in order to provide the stroke care here, which we just don't have 24/7 coverage. And so doing those outside specialties that we might not have enough staffing in order to provide 24/7 coverage, that are mostly inpatient specialties, to provide backup if somebody were to leave quickly, and we could provide that telemedicine coverage in order to backfill that. Gaps in coverage, traditionally non-rural specialties that we could bring in. And again, the patient would have to be at one of our facilities in order to bill for that correctly and really enjoy any type of compensation whatsoever. But really, we're going back to the pre-pandemic situation where out of an RHC, if a patient's at home and not at a medical clinic, the closed commercial networks, the payer, the federal payers and the state payers, we just do not get paid to do virtual medicine. And that's really the heart of the matter. And if that's my punchline, and that's really the moral of the story, until the regulations change, and I know one of your first questions is probably going to be, but how bad is it? What do we get paid? We really are talking, if we get paid, it is pennies on the dollar, 10%, 20%, 30, or a third of what we normally get paid. And that's the unfortunate situation of virtual care in a rural critical access situation, is that we just don't get compensated. They don't want to pay for virtual medicine. And that's because of the commercial closed networks. That's because of the restrictions on federal and state payers paying anything. And if they do pay, it is a fraction of what we get for the traditional encounters. So that's how we use telemedicine to get through the pandemic. We're really hoping, I think everybody would agree, that it has its place in our delivery care in the United States, but unfortunately we're just behind the times, and to continue to utilize it on a large scale would just be a really difficult financial situation for us. So that's it. Any questions?
Yes, Scott Dale here.
Yes, sir.
How do the payers handle the potential for fraud in the telemedicine situation?
Through virtual care?
Yeah.
You mean fraud as in the patient not being who they are and things like that?
Patient never called, never, it just seems to me that the potential is greater in a telemedicine situation than it is in
Sure.
showing up in the office.
That's one of the challenges, and one of the things that we require our patients to do is submit their insurance information and things like that. But you're right, that fraud aspect is part of the concern and maybe part of the limitation on why it's not used widespread. But we require the patient to provide still an ID and insurance card and insurance information, and we still bill for it. The way the big commercial cash pay customers or cash pay companies get away with it is they don't care, right? If you pay us, we'll see whoever you are. They don't have the same restrictions on, you have to validate your insurance, and we've got to bill your insurance and be compensated through the traditional program.
Yeah.
So a lot of the companies that make a big run at this and make a lot of money through it, they just don't have to deal with the insurance companies, and that's a big advantage for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you've just answered my question, Scott, because I have a colleague who belongs to a telemedicine organization and is able to see clients throughout the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
The company itself is located in Europe. They have a contract with Cover California, and she sees, well, she only works part-time, so she sees, I think, every 20 minutes she's seeing somebody or talking to somebody. And the one thing that I have to say about telemedicine is you have to really be a good listener and a good communicator, because you don't have all the gadgets and you're not there to feel things. And it really is collecting the information and getting that from your client, and then to make a logical diagnosis or attempt to make a diagnosis.
Yeah, you've hit on two important points. One, if it's a cash pay business, a lot of these regulatory controls just don't apply. You can be sitting anywhere to a certain extent, and you could do it through a lot of different virtual networks and setup, because it's just cash pay. It's a very different situation. But you're absolutely right on another point, that this is not the end all be all that some people have painted it to be. It's a very useful tool in a very applicable situation, but it's not for everybody. It's not for every situation. It is very verbal. There's no analytics or diagnostics to it. It's purely verbal, and so it's limited in its basis. But I would argue it has a bigger use in our situation than we are allowed to take advantage of.
Scott, I have a question. So is this more of a, because we're a rural hospital, is this more of a problem for us than the big city hospitals, or?
Good question. It's a mix, because you have to remember some of these commercial payers have these shared savings, shared risk type of models where, it's funny that the commercial payers, they motivate their shared risk patients to take advantage of this because they know that it increases access and decreases overall cost. But for the commercial people or the commercial payers in our situation, we don't have access to those shared risk contracts. So we can't take advantage of that, and therefore they don't push it on us. They do it through their own closed network.
Yeah.
So it's a very different model. And I don't have to tell you that, we have different regulatory environments. We have the B clinics, the D clinics, the RHCs, multiple different regulatory controls. And in all of those, they still don't match what an in-person encounter would compensate us. And that's the real sad part of this. So to varying degrees, we have to eat the difference. In a B clinic, it's a little bit less. Some people pay pretty close to the same. Some people still don't pay at all. But when you get up to the D clinics and the RHCs, which are our more prevalent clinical settings, there's just no comparison. We either don't get paid or we're paid pennies on the dollar.
I think some of it was making sure we could continue to take care of provide patient care, but also keep our providers safe and COVID free.
Absolutely.
So one more quick question. Do you have any sense whether doctors like telemedicine or they don't like telemedicine?
I think with anything, it's going to depend on the physician, on the provider. Some people absolutely love it. It might be more of a generational thing. But I think everybody agrees that it has its use. It's just a matter of how big the use and to what degree we use it. But I think the general feeling, my personal belief, is that most see it as a very useful tool that we just unfortunately cannot utilize to a good extent.
Yeah, that's too bad. Thanks.
Yep.
Quick question with regards to the most recent relief bill that was passed. There were some provisions. I just pulled up some of the data on it. $500 million in grant funding for rural health care, which providers use to increase telehealth capabilities, and $50 million for behavioral health, which include providing services via telehealth. Do those apply to us, or have we had a chance to look into how those might apply to us?
Some, yes. And Jake, Crystal, Harry, feel free to weigh in, but we took advantage of some of those to offset some of the increases of expense, some of the equipment for virtual care and things like that. Behavioral health, we were able to, I think, get some subsidy for the behavioral health compensation for those encounters through virtual care and things like that. We weren't able to take full advantage of some of the big academic hospital institutions, but we took advantage of them to some degree, the ones we were allowed to do. But I don't know if Crystal or Harry have some additional input on that.
This is Harry, and I'll let Crystal comment as well. FQHCs, which are a twin, federally qualified health centers, they're a twin to rural health clinics. They typically enjoy grants on the side to help them with capital projects or other things. Rural health clinics don't get those. So that special funding for rural centers certainly really would help a lot of the federally qualified health centers across the country. I've not seen anything that does anything but a simple block one-time help. There was nothing systemic that I've seen, and I would be willing to be corrected by any of the team, that really corrects the huge disparities that Scott has said, where we might get 1/5 or 1/7 of the rate from many key payers in a telemedicine type setting versus an in-person setting. So we're appreciative of those. We're going to look to see whether we can use any of those because we're oversubscribed in mental health and so forth. But I think many of them are kind of like one-time blocks. They don't provide a systemic change.
And a lot of those funds, they haven't put out the detailed language yet, but they're quite specific to the treatment of COVID, not generically building an infrastructure for long-term. It's specific to the treatment of a COVID patient or to implement vaccines or those types of things. It's the only one that I think is a little more generic is the mental health piece because of the impact the pandemic has had on the mental health of our community and our society. So that's the only one that I think is a little bit more broad, but most of the other funds are very specific to the treatment of COVID.
Does anybody have any other comments or questions for Scott or our Chief Financial Officer or Harry or
Our
anybody?
panel of experts.
Yes. Our telemedicine experts here.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see any hands being raised. So I want to thank you, Scott. It was very helpful and informative to learn more about, why we aren't moving so fast forward with telemedicine, though we think it might be a great thing. It does have its limitations. So thank you again. Okay, moving on to 16.3, we have the COVID-19 update. And Harry and Judy, are you going to be presenting that?
Sure, I'll just kick it off briefly. First, I want to really thank our team that's been about this for over 13 months now. As I've shared in the past, they're very courageous through all the phases, and I can't offer that commendation enough. And we're on and about a once in 100-year, very important public health effort that continues to evolve. And Judy has done a great job as kind of being our single point person on our team. And, the rest of us have been working to support and help that. But it's always good to have a single point person. And I'm sure many of our team members are a little bit tired from time to time, but I think she's got some good information to share. And I'm excited that I hope we're starting to get close to I call it maybe a 12-week sprint, but I'll let her talk about that.
Thank you, Harry and Board of Directors. And Harry, thank you for the compliment, but it actually takes an AC village to manage this pandemic. So everybody has been very involved. So I'll just give a brief update a little bit just on COVID testing. So we still provide respiratory illness clinic at Truckee and in Incline. I believe last week in Truckee, we had a 3.7 positivity rate, which we really haven't seen an increase in that. And Incline continues to see about 3 or 4 positive in their ER per week. I will tell you today, we had our first COVID admission since February 23rd. So that was a change, but again, we haven't seen besides that a dramatic increase. So I just wanted to share that information. What a lot of people are interested then is the vaccine process for our Incline Village community and Tahoe Forest Hospital District area. So I'll start with Incline. So Incline still continues to provide 100 to 200 doses per week of first and second dose of the vaccine. To date, they have, I think, had 1,045 first doses. So that's quite a bit for that community. And just a reminder, the Safeway and the fire department are also immunizing. So we continue to provide that service to the Incline community. For the Eastern Placer and Eastern Nevada County, we continue to have a clinic at Sierra College. To date, we've provided 6,200 vaccines there. Out of that, approximately 4,000 individuals have been vaccinated. So the 6,200 includes first and second dose. So that's a large population. Currently, we are providing vaccines 4 days a week. We've moved to 10-hour days, and we are able to do 1,200 vaccines in that location either first or second dose. It just depends on what we can schedule for the day. I will let you know that approximately 3 weeks ago, we saw quite a bit of change and opportunity to get vaccines. Before it might be 100 a week, it might have been 400 a week, but now it's how many do you want? And so that's really enjoyable. I think recently I was asked, we have 400 Moderna, do you want 400? And I said, well, actually, we'd like to have 1,000. Can we have 1,000? And they gave us 1,000. So both Placer and Nevada County every week are asking what our capacity is for the following week to provide vaccines. If you all have recalled, there has been a movement in the state of California for having one program, what's under Blue Shield. And so what is happening with that today is any independent provider needs to contract with Blue Shield, and we have signed our contract. Currently, the counties still are independent, and then some of the pharmacies, CVS and I think Walgreens, actually get their vaccines from the federal government. So there's sort of 3 buckets that are occurring, but we continue to see an increase in availability of vaccines. So Tahoe Forest Hospital District has contracted with Blue Shield in order to, in the future, to get our vaccines from that program. In the meantime, we are receiving weekly doses from our counties until that goes into place. We believe that will go into place the end of April. In order for that to go forward, really, it's about 2 items. One is we will begin with what's called the My Turn scheduling program. And people will need to sign up for that, and we'll post that on our website next week. And so when we begin to work with Blue Shield and get those doses, people will be able to automatically be notified, and they will sign up through My Turn and get appointments through My Turn. The reason it's a little bit far off than people anticipate, the transition takes time. And instead of with the counties, they order on Thursday and we get our vaccines on Monday and Tuesday. My understanding with Blue Shield, the turnaround time's about 2 weeks. So we wanted to make sure that we were ready for My Turn and we would have openings, and that when we ordered, we would then be able to make sure we get those doses. So we anticipate we'll be able to order next week or the week after. And so that's why we waited. So that's why it's the 26th out to the 26th. But we are still getting vaccines from both Washoe County and Nevada County. Harry has asked that we have a plan in place that if we have the opportunity to get more and more vaccines, that we be able to really vaccinate our community, both East and Placer County, through the end of June, that we would be done by the end of June. And so not only do we have our Sierra College plan, but our team is working on 2 other alternatives where we could do higher throughput vaccines. We know we can do 1,000 a day if we have a location. So there's 2 options for that. One is the gym where we did the teachers at, or the other potentially then is the airport. So we are putting that plan together and staffing. So if we are allocated all of those vaccines, we would be able to accommodate that by the end of June, which I think is something we can accomplish. I don't know if anybody noticed from Governor Newsom yesterday, again, there is a change in eligibility. So beginning April 1st, individuals age 50 plus will be able to make an appointment. And then beginning April 15, 16 plus will be eligible to an appointment. So we are meeting with the Nevada and Placer County tomorrow so that we can understand from our vaccine clinic where we will sit in that change. We'll know more tomorrow if we will open to 50 plus on April 1st and then April 15, 16 plus. We are anticipating just to be able to move forward, but we'll get.
So Judy, with the 16 plus, wasn't there a condition that they had some underlying, not in California?
Well, so currently you are eligible 16 to 64 based on certain comorbidities. That is currently what patients we are accepting, community members that meet that eligibility. Beginning April 15th, it's anybody 16 and over. So there's no comorbidities.
Criteria.
It's just open. April 15th, we are opening to anybody. That's how I read that. So unless I hear something different tomorrow, the state of California is open to April 15th. I will let you know, not every county moves that fast. So we have been able to hear, basically because we have a small community and we are actually getting quite a few vaccines. So we're able to move along. But I know not all counties may be able to do that April 15th. So we'll wait and see.
So Judy, do you have any feel for vaccine hesitancy in our area?
I haven't really talked to people. I know there are individuals that are not getting the vaccine. I mean, we are anticipating, I think we thought there were 38,000 eligible individuals, not quite 38,000, because that includes the children 16 and under, but we were approximating, I think, 20,000 people we needed to potentially vaccinate, or 15, and looking at about 60% of that group. So we're kind of looking at what other communities are doing.
Judy, question. We all read that the vaccine is not 100% effective. Do we keep tabs on those who show up and test positive after having the vaccine?
We do, and I don't know if Dr. Cole would like to speak more to that.
I mean, my only experience is that when we are finding people positive after being fully vaccinated 2 weeks after their second shot, we are sending them for special testing for variants of COVID to see if they have one of the more recent mutations. But we are still testing people. This is a shot that is 95% effective. And what we know is that if you do get COVID after you have this vaccine, your severity of illness is much, much less than if you weren't vaccinated.
Guys, last month we heard about a wonderful program that you put on at Town Hall in the Spanish-speaking community. And I'm wondering how successful that has proven to be, and any feedback that you might have received from that, and if you plan to do it again.
I'm happy to speak to our Spanish community that is getting vaccinated. We haven't seen a huge amount of that opportunity. We do have a process in place in which and community partners where individuals can reach out to them, and then they can reach out to some of our staff, and we assist in that. I will tell you, at Incline, actually, they have moved to a 45 and above, and they're now are seeing more of the Hispanic community. So it may be more of the age. When we did the 65 and 75 above, did we really have that big of a population? But they actually are seeing quite a few more of those individuals. So we still are active in reaching out to that community.
And as far as repeating a session like that, Mary, we have not, but we have posted the Spanish session on our website, and we are highly encouraging our Spanish-speaking patients to go to that website to be able to hear the information. And it was a good hour-long session.
I think when we
go ahead, Harry.
When we go down to 16 and above, I think we'll really start to pick up a lot of folks that are below age 50, because I think there's a big population below 50. And so I think it's been kind of an unfair situation, yet the door hasn't been really open to a lot of that population.
That's a good point. Do we have any intention of ever having like a mobile van or something like that going out into some of the areas?
So we're actually working with the counties on not a mobile van, but we have received more homebound patients, where we have homebound patients that need assistance, and the county are going to those homes.
And are you trying to use the single shot Johnson & Johnson so you don't have to do a follow-up?
We do not necessarily anticipate that we will receive the Johnson & Johnson. I mean, we may, but keep in mind that Johnson & Johnson in the state of California is being used mostly for those areas where they are concerned that people will not return for their second dose. And so transportation issues, homeless areas. So at this time, I do not believe Nevada County has gotten some first doses once they used on the west side, but I really don't anticipate we will. As a healthcare district, we have the ability to, we have the ultra low freezer and we have a freezer. So I believe we may not have that opportunity.
And Judy, have we gotten any information maybe from the promotorias who have seen some of the Hispanic community that could give us feedback as far as who they're following?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So we actually have, not the promotor, but Maria Martin, who sits on our committee once a week. So we involve her in the communication and to hear what is occurring out in the community. So she can make sure she shares that back out to the promotores. I want to remind you all that the Nevada County actually hired one person just to be on the east side of the county, just to work with the Hispanic community and with our promotores. And then those people that are don't have maybe a phone, trying to go door to door, those people that don't have computers. So the county, I actually have to say, has also been very involved in working with us and with our promotores. Any other questions? So I just have to say, I think it's really good news in the state of California. As they mentioned, we would be seeing increase in doses, and it's really exciting finally to be actually contacted and say, how many doses would you like next week, Judy?
Oh.
That is great. That's great to hear.
Well, thank you, Judy, for your report, but mostly thank you and your team for all the work that you've done in testing and getting our community vaccinated. And we still look forward this summer to hear better news and that we can see each other in person again, because I do see the brighter light at the end of the tunnel.
So just both Nevada and Placer County are in the red tier. I'm sure everybody knows that.
Yep. And
again, I really want to thank the staff and leadership who managed the vaccine clinic, Jason Grodier and Megan Shirley, who just it's every day. It's work every day. So that team out there is doing an amazing job, and the staff that are out there. So thank you for that recognition, Director Wong.
Yeah. Okay. So then if that's the end of our update on the COVID-19, then we'll go to item 18. Do I have any board committee reports?
Yes, this is Art. I've got one for the Governance Committee. We met on March 2nd. Judy led a great discussion on the plan to update our strategic plan, which I didn't realize takes all year to do because of how much work we put into it. But we have some estimated dates when things will be done. And the 3-year plan, when we get it done, would begin on July 1 of 2022. And again, we'll talk more about that at our retreat. We did get from Ted a board retreat update. The retreat is confirmed for May 6th and 7th. And it looks like we're going to be actually meeting in a room together, which will be great. We talked a little bit about the agenda for the first and second day. And but again, there's a lot to be done on that. I had a brief discussion about the board self-assessment, which we completed last November. And overall, it was a very good self-assessment, very consistent with the year before. This will also be discussed at the retreat. A couple of the items that came out of the board self-assessment were potential goals. One, of course, would be to participate in the strategic plan. And the other one was to improve our overall health of the community with a focus on the underserved. That comment came up in a couple of these self-assessments. As you know, we also talked about the conflict of interest code, which we dealt with tonight. And at our next meeting, which will be in July, we have 3 more policies we'll talk about. including the board of director qualifications, the conflict of interest policy, and the policy on new program and services. It was a good meeting. Our next meeting will be probably the week of July 12th. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Are there
Yeah,
any
just
questions for Art?
Yeah, quick question, Art. With regards to the agenda for the retreat, is there an opportunity to add to that agenda? Are you looking for input from others, or what's that process look like?
Well, mostly I think that will be Harry that works on that, Ted that works on that, and our outside consultant. And so if you have any questions or concerns, I would check with Ted or Harry and get your input in. Yeah.
So Michael, also just know that from our board, and maybe it was prior to your coming, there's been input into what we want to talk about and discuss at the retreat. And so the first day is pretty formalized with what's going on nationally in governance on boards for hospitals and hospital districts, and some other issues at the hospital. And then on the second day, we'll do that discussion, as well as opening up for the board to talk about issues that they would like to discuss or to develop further in the year.
Fantastic. Yeah, this would
Yeah,
be
again,
my
there were
first
some
retreat,
specific, yeah. Well, let's see, in October, when I first got on the board, it was my first retreat, and it was overwhelming. But we do have some specific items that will potentially be on the agenda. So it looks like it's going to be a great retreat.
And we've not had this retreat guide before. She's new to our district, but is nationally known. And if you go onto YouTube and Google, or not Google, but look up Pam Connect, you can see her and how she presents on governance. She's been well written and also does some videos on board governance. So we're
is she a
hoping,
governance lady or a strategy lady?
I think she's a governance.
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 Yeah.
How do you spell her last name?
I knew you. I'm going to have to email that to you.
K-N-E-C-T, I think it is.
There's a P in there, isn't there?
There's a T in there.
K-N-E-C-T.
There's an A in there. Sounds like. I'll email it to you, Dale, and I'll send you the link. Yeah. Okay.
It's in the
Any other board committees? I did meet.
Yeah, the Hospital Foundation met for its monthly meeting. Update on fundraising to date, just north of 450,000. And then really an ongoing discussion for the bulk of the meeting on the purpose, mission, and goals of the foundation. No reportable actions from that necessarily. It was sort of open discussion, gathering of ideas, and that's continues to be a work in progress. Will be the focus of the next meeting as well. One of the items that was discussed though in the prior meeting was a question of, to the public, it might seem that the hospital is doing really well. So why would I need to donate? Why would I need to support the foundation? So a discussion around hospital costs and really how we might impact the perception of the public that although the hospital is stable and doing financially well, there are needs that extend beyond that to reach the long-term goals of the health system. So really great discussion on that. I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I attended the Tahoe Institute for Rural Health Research, and the board heard more about it today, but essentially there are two meetings, one for the actual research board and then one for the LLC. And it was interesting to hear the update on some of the devices they're working at and the strategies that they're going forward with in gathering more data and taking it to the FDA. And like I said, the board's heard more about that. And then our LLC is, they're the overriding organization. And again, they're looking at financing and how strategically they can position themselves to get seed money to further on, not necessarily the research, but the actual development of the devices. So that's my report from them. Any other committees? Any closing remarks from our board or our audience?
Yeah, this is Art. I've got a couple. I was out for a walk the other day on the golf course near my house and ran into a lady who was walking her dog also, and turns out she's a nurse at the hospital. So we started talking about the hospital, and I wanted to report that she was very complimentary of the hospital, very complimentary of management of the hospital, and really liked working there and thought it was a great place to work. So I just wanted to pass that on. And secondly, a friend of mine just had a second surgery at the hospital this year. And he and his wife just moved up full-time from the Bay Area. And he said, quote, Dr. Hunt and team was professional, caring, and highly competent. And he said basically the first thing after the first surgery. So he's a big fan of the hospital. So, you know, both of those comments made me really proud to be part of the hospital. So I thought I'd pass those on.
Thank you for sharing those, Art. It does make you proud.
It does. It really does.
If there's no further remarks, then the meeting will be adjourned. Thank everybody for coming and participating.